Okay, this is a battery project using 18650 batteries from Samsung. They're INR 1865-35E, so they don't have the tabs on the end. So what I did is I 3D printed these. I designed it on Onshape and 3D printed. One is red and one is black, just so I can tell the top and the bottom, but they're identical design. And what we're going to do is we're going to unbox all of these batteries and put them in here with standing up like this. And we're going to put 100 of them in here, 50 up and 50 down. So I'll go do that right now. Okay, so I've completed putting all the batteries, taking them out of the little white boxes and putting them 50 positive, 50 negative in the thing. The reason we're doing that is because in the end we're going to have these plates which are 50 in parallel. So the next step is we have to put the top half of this on here. It's a little bit tricky because the batteries are just kind of loose, but if you watch, I can get it on there pretty quickly. There we go. And what we have is I have three places, one here, and one here. And this is just tape to hold the nut in there. These are just nuts that fit in the hex hole that the 3D printer made. You can see I had a little bit of support material that I had to pop out, and the way the printer did that, it works really well. So this tape is on here just to hold these nuts so that I can flip this whole thing over. So I'm gonna flip it over now. Now the only thing that's happened is I flipped it over, and those nuts are under this tape right here in three places. And you just have to remember where those are, because we're going to put these bolts in this hole, and it's going to hit that nut on the other side, right? So one in the center. The reason I'm using these particular three holes, I don't need more than three to hold it together, but they're in the middle between the plates, so I don't have to worry about this bolt shorting things out. Okay, now I'm going to tighten these down, and that'll hold my battery together. Let me do that. Tighten these down, and now I can actually turn my battery. You have to be a little bit careful because it's not, real strong until we get all the bolts in with the metal plate. So we don't really need this tape anymore. We're going to pull it off. And then the next step is going to be to put the springs that touch the battery and between the battery and the plate. We're going to put those springs on one side of the battery. So I'll do that right now. So the next step in building my battery is I ordered about 10,000 of these little springs. They're all put together in a bag like this from China. It took a while to get them, but the company did great. I ordered them through Alibaba. They look like this, and they're basically acting as a fuse and a connection to the battery. They'll blow out at a little bit above 4 amps. So if any of your batteries short out, it literally shrinks up and pulls away from the battery, which works pretty good. So what I have to do next takes a while. I have to put these springs in the holes to where they touch the battery. So there's one spring in place. Here's the next one. And the next one, etc. All the way across on this side. I'm going to do 50 of these. So I'll go away and do that, and then I'll show you. Okay, so now I have all the springs in place, and you can see I stuck 2 long bolts through from the other side. They're actually only sitting inset into the hex hole on the other side, so that they won't touch the plate on the other side. And these are just temporary, and that's why on this plate I have a big hole so that the head of the screw on the back side, after I put this plate on temporary. Then I can pull these two screws out, and I'm going to use other screws that go through the whole plate. But you have to hold this down in place. So this is going to sit just like that, and it's going to squeeze all those springs down, and I'm just going to hold them temporarily. So I'm going to put a washer on here like this, and then I'm not using lock nuts for this because we want to be able to crank this down easily, and it's just temporary. So same thing over here. We can crank this down. Now I'm gonna tighten these two screws to pull the plate against the springs, but I don't want to pull it very far. I'm just going to pull it far enough that the springs are held in place. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back and we'll show how to get the other side on, add the screws that go through the whole thing, and then hold it together, and then remove these temporary screws. And then we'll have one side of the 50 batteries in parallel all set. All right, so I've flipped this over, and you can see the plate is on the other side with just the two temporary screws. So now these 50 springs are all in place, and now we have to put the plate on this side, but then we have to add this plate so that the big hole is right next to this screw right here, because we're going to remove that screw after we get this plate screwed on with long screws. So this is ready to go, except I have to put these screws with this little white insulator that fits very nicely, you know, into these metal plates so that it insulates the screw from the plate. Because if we put a screw through and screw it down, it'll short the two plates together and you'll have some serious burn going on. So what I'm going to do is put these screws up from the back side like this. So they're going into that plate and seating in there. And now I can put the nut on this side to hold these things down. So I'm going to put a little piece of tape down here to hold this screw in place. And then we can put that plate on and screw it down and squeeze all the springs. So we'll go away and do that. Alrighty, we have our 4 corner screws that are just basically 2 of them are going to be used to hold this temporarily with a quick, easy to push down nut. And these 2 bigger holes are going to be in line with those other temporary screws. So we put this on. Okay, now it's on there, it's aligned, and we just have to put this temporary screw. We're going to replace it with a lock nut. We're going to do 2 of these temporary nuts, and then we'll put 2 permanent nuts on the other side. So these again are temporary. I'm going to squeeze this and crank these nuts down just enough to hold it while I put the other screws in that are going to hold it together. So, and then we'll take out the 2 temporary, this one and this one, so that we don't have any chance of shorting the plates together. So I'm going to go away and put all these bolts in and crank it down tight. So one more thing. So I have this screwed down a little bit, but you can see on my final bolts, I'm going to put that the little washer that insulates. I'm going to put that on all 4 bolts with lock nut and a washer on this side. So the other side doesn't have a washer. It's just the head of the screw. But anyway, that's a piece I forgot to tell you. So these 2 temporary ones, I didn't put that insulator because it's insulated on the other side. And so this is just temporary. Completed the first 50 in parallel set of batteries. This plate shorts all the one side of the battery, and this plate over here shorts all the other side of the battery. The bolts that I have through here have these insulators. This one without a washer, and this one I put a washer on because of twisting the nut. So you can see 6 of them holds the plate really flat. All the springs are really tight, and the batteries are seated in the plastic thing. And you can see the spring is actually suspended between the plate and the battery, so it actually makes really good contact. And if one of these batteries shorts out, the spring will just shrivel up and pull away from the battery. And because the sides of the battery are suspended, the spring will just be laying in that hole when you take it apart if that battery goes bad. Which is really good, because if you short that battery out, it will get hot and go completely on fire, and then it will light the one next to it, which will melt down and touch itself and burn itself out, and it's a chain reaction. So it's very important to have fuses. Most people only put a fuse on one side of the battery. I like to have fuses on both sides, just in case something goes wrong with one of the fuses, maybe. I don't know. I had these springs all made in China, so I'm not sure that the gauge of the wire is perfect. So I've tested several of them. They burn out somewhere above 4 amps. Some of them at about 4 amps, they start to discolor. And so I'm going to make this battery in an application where I never go over 2 amps. So nothing ever gets warm, and it just works perfectly. So these are 18650 batteries. They say 3,500 milliamp hours, but even when they were brand new, I measured them, they were only 3,000 milliamp hours. So I got them through China for $3 a piece. And I'm actually trying to sell them for $2 a piece. Nobody wants them, so I thought I'd make another project. All right, the next thing that we have to do is to repeat that process for the second plate on these 2 sides. Okay, it's just exactly what we just went through. 100 springs, 50 batteries, and then I can combine that with this other battery that I already finished, and it will give me 4 in serial and 50 in parallel. So 50S, 4P, 4S and 50P. All right, so I'm going to go away and add that other plate, and then we'll hook up the BMS and go from there. Okay, so this is the finished battery with the BMS attached, and of course you hook one BMS to each of the legs of the battery, and it's finished, and it's a 16.8 volt fully charged battery. And you can see this one's shorting these 2 together because we come from plus minus plus minus plus, right? And so that's how the series are going. This one, it doesn't look as nice as this one. I went ahead and got these plates that cover the entire back. And in fact, I have multiple plates. I ordered all of these at the same time from China. This one is for 25p, and you could take it and put it in 4 places, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the battery, and serialize as many as you wanted. This is for 50p, it's 100p and 200p. So I'm using this 50p on the back of this battery because I have the 50p on these side, and then this ends up being 100p used for 50p, 50p, until it shorts them together. Anyway, these plates, I ordered a bunch of these, and they're aluminum, and you got to make sure you get aluminum that won't oxidize. Anyway, the only other thing I was going to specify is when you're hooking cables, like when you hook this cable on right here, in this original battery, I was putting this screw all the way through the battery. And you have to insulate it on both sides, and it's just kind of a big bolt and a little bit of a waste of money. So what I did is, on the new one, is I went ahead and put nuts, like this nut right here, this nut. I put a few nuts distributed in places where I didn't have bolts, And then I can use those to screw down the wires because they're underneath. So if you look at right there, you can see that nut is behind that plate. And it's when you screw the screw in there, it just goes down into the hole that is all the way through the battery, but you don't want to put a long enough screw to go through and hit the other plate. But in any case, you can screw your screws on using this technique. And you just put as many in there as you need. Anyway, that's the whole project. I hope it makes sense to everybody. Thank you. And if you want to call me, my number is 925-980-1021. And my name's Tommy Berry.